Hello, and welcome to the Modern Software Engineering channel. Today, I am joined by the one and only Dave Farley, whose channel this really is, but I've had to do the intros because he forgot the intro. So, I'm Steve Smith, I'm Cornish, and I'm the Global Head of Modernization and Platforms at Equal Experts. Dave, who are you?
I'm Dave Farley. I'm not Cornish, and I'm not the modern head of platforms at Equal Experts. Nice to meet you.
That's exactly the role title. Thanks, Dave. So the one big question we've been compelled to answer today by Dave Farley's many-membered company is, can you win with artificial intelligence without strong tech fundamentals? Dave, can you do great things with AI without being good at technology?
No.
No, I don't think so either. So that was fast. We should stop recording.
So as usual, we've got the answer quite quickly. Now we should probably try and justify it.
Should we, though? Yes. So, first of all, if you are a citizen developer, if like me, you have Gen AI generating bash scripts to manage your NAS, then AI is going to achieve great things with really poor tech fundamentals because, shock horror, I am not test driving bash scripts on my NAS. But if you are an enterprise organization, the kind of companies that you and I are both familiar with, Dave, then without tech fundamentals, I don't think letting Gen AI loose would be a very good idea.
Yeah, so I think what we see a lot of people doing and online and in real life as well is building small, simple things with vibe coding very quickly and essentially verifying them by just running the application and seeing if it seems to work. And that's fine if you're trying to organize your photo library on your NAS like Steve was talking about. If you're doing something one-off, engaging with a computer to fulfill a personal problem that you have in that moment, that's probably fine. That's a useful facility, but that's not what professional software development is about. We're building systems that are a lot more complicated than that, and we're going to keep changing them over their lifetimes. And that takes an awful lot more problem solving and an awful lot more discipline skills to manage that process, it seems to me.
Yeah, I'd agree. I also think that if we were working in a startup, we'd be very tempted to use it in prototyping. I can imagine Gen AI killing prototyping tools pretty quickly. If we want to rush something out very quickly, build a fast website with a database behind it just to start storing data. I guess this is what the Lean Startup book was talking about back in a few years ago now. But I can totally imagine us doing that just to collect fast feedback. I know that quite a few companies now that are quite worried about their salespeople being given Claude code, building stuff quickly and then saying, hey, you should totally buy this. And then say to the developers, this won't take too long to build for real, will it? I mean, those kind of conversations, I've certainly seen plan companies before, and now I think they'll be hugely accelerated. I do think that there's a huge gulf between individuals saying, I have achieved amazing things with this, and enterprise organizations saying, we have achieved amazing things with this. I have seen those examples, but they're few and far between so far.
Yeah, and there are certainly examples of people using these tools at scale. A lot of the leading AI research labs are saying that they are not writing handwriting code anymore. In essence, they are working using AI assistants to write the actual code, but that doesn't prevent the need for technical insight and technical skills in decomposing problems and specifying them to the AI assistants in a way that you can get the result that you're aiming for.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that the need to think is greater than ever before. I think that the pressure on engineers to come up with a effective solution to a problem is going to be greater than ever before. Where I have seen Gen AI create really powerful solutions so far, powerful in the sense of the accelerate outcomes look good, end user satisfaction is good. There was a really strong technical foundation in place. So if I think about LMAX, for example, where Dave and I worked together between 2008 and 2010 on the trading exchange, there are some parts of that trading exchange, the trade reporting gateway, for example, or the account service, that are fundamentally about retrieving people's information from a database or about translating messages from one format into another. In the case of a trade reporting gateway, you're turning a trade into a trade report and then sending it onto a clearinghouse as a massive simplification. I can totally imagine in 2026 me going to Dave, wherever we still work at MX today, and saying, let's regenerate the trade reporting gateway now using Gen AI. Let's stop putting people on this because we want to concentrate their efforts instead on the execution venue, which has to have sub-millisecond matching, transparent order of execution, and you should absolutely want all of your brains on that, not AI on that. But the reason I would have confidence in Gen AI building that trade reporting gateway to a high standard is the incredible technical foundation that we had at LMAX. If you think about technical alignment as standards and working practices, we had all of that tightly encapsulated in the build pipeline, in coding patterns, and it would be pretty easy to train the Gen AI, Claude Code, Cursor, Copilot, whatever, on all of those pieces of that LMAX technical foundation. I've absolutely seen companies that have that foundation create marvels. And I've also seen companies that don't have that foundation just run into a brick wall faster than before.
Yeah. And the thing that we had, I think that was, really enabled this, as well as the problem solving focus of the team. But we had this body of automated acceptance tests that were executable specifications that we could just run at any solution that was generated and say, does it do all of these things? Because if it does all of these things, then it's doing the job that we need it to do. I think one way of thinking about the change that AI is bringing to programming is the constraint was never really in typing code, or I think it was always in terms of thinking. I think that constraint is still there, but the other constraint that becomes even more important, that was already still there, is verification. It's understanding, did we get what we wanted? Does it do what we want? Does it continue to do what we want when we ask for changes in future? I've certainly, in my coding with AIs, I've certainly had it, at points where I've got a body of tests that were running and passing, it make a change, and then some of those tests are failing. So it's not keeping the system the same. It's not keeping it working. So those things matter, and they matter profoundly in professional software development for more complicated systems.
Yes, much more so than my photo management solution or the calendar syncing glue code that I've written now. Gen AI is fantastic for glue code between two non-differentiating things that aren't business critical and just need doing. Like if I was a SaaS provider of, like a timesheet vendor, I'd be a little worried about the future because companies now could build their own timesheet solutions like really quickly. And if it's not a critical part of their business, I can totally imagine someone saying, do you know what, this is a way that we could actually save a chunk of money and make a thing that actually is a bit less annoying for our employees.
Yeah. The other aspect of this is, I think it's important to look carefully at some of the claims that are made by people that are doing things. So recently Anthropic have been advertising the fact that they had a team of AI agents working without human supervision to implement a C compiler. Well, fine. That's great. So these things worked in isolation on their own for 2 weeks to generate a C compiler that was capable of compiling Linux. But one of the things about a language like C is that it's got a body of standards that define what it is. Claude was trained on, the source code for GCC, I would imagine. And so it's got a memory of how these things work. So there's a lot to this. When we're talking about building, what for most of us, if we're professional developers, the problem is to build things that people haven't seen before, or that at least this organization haven't had before. And so you don't have that body of training. We've got to invent that body of training to teach the AI what it is that we want to build. And that in its own right is a tricky skill that we found it hard enough to do with human programmers, let alone with AI programmers. But that's what it takes.
Yes, I definitely see a correlation between AI effectiveness and the amount of stuff that it can steal from the past. So what I'll see is that Claude Code, Cursor, Copilot, and others are really good at Java code, but they're really not so good at Terraform, which is, of course, a very popular platform engineering tool. And I did a previous video with Trisha G on this channel around one big question around will AI create a lot of legacy code? And one example Trisha I remember talking about was, given her background working with Groovy, she hasn't seen a lot of really great Gradle scripting done by Gen AI. And our shared theory was that there's not a lot of enterprise grade Gradle scripts that are out in the wild, because of course, if you've done something really effective with Terraform or with Gradle within your company, you're probably not open sourcing that, if only for time reasons.
Yeah.
A lot of the great stuff done at LMAX, the acceptance testing framework, that's not open source. It could be in theory. The company doesn't make a priority like so many other companies, which is totally understandable. So if you ask Gen AI, build me an amazing acceptance testing framework, it's not going to be super amazing, which of course then means you need to invest a lot more time yourself in that technical foundation. So the ability for Gen AI to give you something you don't currently have in terms of productivity, like the tech stack is going to really matter, because the more that your desired tech stack lines up with a commodity tech stack that's well understood in the wild with lots of examples on the internet, the more easily Gen AI is going to produce a solution that you like.
Yeah. There's an interesting new generation of tools that can help with some of that stuff. I came across a brand new open source project. I think it was launched this week, that will help you through the process of making technical and architectural decisions, like choosing your tech stack. And you can and as part of that, it will show the reasoning. It will do architecture decision records to explain the reasoning behind the choices that it makes and why it would rule out some choices versus others and so on. So there's lots of that stuff where these tools can help us, but there's still things that we need to think about, we need to be involved in order to make this stuff work.
I still struggle also with the idea of a Gen AI tool for a team. What I see is Gen AI tools for individuals, and yet we know that the most effective unit of delivery is a team.
Yeah.
And there is such variability in how different people use the tools. So an easy example here is in my company, on my team, we have a shared ChatGPT workspace where we have a single chat or multiple chats with ChatGPT. And even in that, it's astonishing how you can see how differently different members of my team interact with ChatGPT. And when different people share example reports from ChatGPT or from Claude or from Gemini with one another, just from the questioning, you can see that everyone has such an individual preference. For example, I've had feedback that my AI is always trying to make friends with me. And I'm always pushing away saying, stop making guesses and ask more questions of me, which is probably reflects how I want to work with humans. But until there's a shared space that people can come together in and really push things forward, I'm just a little dubious. It's not like everyone having their own individual IntelliJ, where it's entirely deterministic and it's probably the same version of IntelliJ that absolutely everyone's using. We're talking about something inherently non-deterministic, where it's really unclear what version of what you're using at any given time.
Yeah.
And people do work with it in fundamentally different ways. Continue on that line of thinking about the need for teams to have a shared way of using AI to build and run services. What kind of technical foundations have you seen, Dave, in startups, scale-ups, or enterprises that have proven to be effective so far?
So in all human teams, I was a big proponent of things like pair programming and mob programming, small autonomous teams that would work closely together and collaborate promiscuously with each other in terms of batting ideas around and understanding things. I don't think that changes very much if we're exploring these problems together. I have come across at least a couple of teams, one team that does pair programming, but with AI as an addition to the pair. So they have two human programmers and AI assistants, and another team that takes that further and does mob programming, where the AI is the typist in effect. And that sounds interesting. I don't know how well those things work from a personal perspective. I've done a little bit of pair programming where we use an AI, but there were two of us doing the pair programming, and that seemed to work quite well as a strategy. I could discuss the ideas with the pair, and we could ask questions of the AI, and then we could instruct the AI on the things that we wanted from it. And that seemed to go quite well when we were working like that.
Yep. Yeah, I'm super comfortable coding with or just working with an AI. I think because I spent so many years pair programming, I find it really natural, alarmingly natural sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that it must be I assume it's quite distressing for folks who haven't had a pair before and are maybe now being made to pair with an AI. I still wonder about companies where when they don't have that strong technical alignment between people, when they don't have great platform engineering or they don't have a great design system, I really wonder how that will work. I know of one part of the UK government where they have great platform engineering and they have the gov.uk design manual, which is effectively a fantastic design system. And this part of the UK government has quite structured business problems for a reason very unique to their part of the government. So combining platform engineering, design system, and structured business problems, they are able to turn policy documents into passable digital services composed of many microservices in really short periods of time, which simply weren't possible before. The difficulty is when people hear the headline of "we're building digital services in weeks, not months or years," the difficulty is explaining to people, well, those building blocks you see, the gov.uk user manual, that took years for gov.uk to create. And that amazing platform engineering, that took a year of your time and many other years before that in other organizations. People brought in all of that context together. Without those building blocks, though, I think it would have taken a long time to build the right thing and a long time to build the thing right.
Yeah, I think that's exactly true. I think we should probably start trying to wrap this up and figure out what we think the technical foundations are that are these foundational things. And you've certainly called out a few there in that nice war story. I think absolutely being able to specify clearly what it is that we want. I think a clear specification of intent is important. And for not entirely for just the accidental complexity parts of the system, but for the other parts of the system, strong platforms that we can build on, that will give us fast feedback, verification of our changes, those sorts of things all seem really important.
Yep, I think that just some absolute basics would be architecture decision records. I've worked in companies before where architecture decision records are based in Confluence.
Yeah.
They're not well read, they're not well understood. At one client of Equal Experts, we actually made them markdown files. We then built a scanner that would pull those into code. And then from there, we had a bunch of different scanners of Teams repositories to understand where they were and weren't conforming with architecture decision records. The key thing there was it wasn't framed as we're checking up on you. It was framed on, hey, you're not conforming to this architecture decision record. Like, what are you seeing differently?
Yeah.
And based on that, then we produced like some really powerful insights that these days you could then plow into an AI and say, every service should be following this architecture decision record, unless you see this particular business context, unless they are video streaming,
yes,
for example, or it's audio streaming, something that's markedly different to the rest of the tech estate.
Yeah.
So architecture decision records would definitely be one for me. And I think that coding standards are due a comeback. There's enormous documents nobody ever used to read, just some really sensible things there around. This is how you name behaviors. This is what the domain model looks like. I remember at LMAX, the domain model part of the code base was actually controlled by the business analysts, which was really very different and pretty awesome. I can totally imagine a world now where all of that knowledge that they had will be captured and expressed in Markdown.
Yeah.
And then you feed that into the AI. So guidelines around domain model, coding standards, architecture decision records, probably your automated functional tests if you had them already.
I think I feel the need that I must call out and name this open source piece of software that I've seen very recently. So I don't have a lot of experience with it personally yet, but it's called NWave. So go to nwave.ai and take a look, because all of the things that you've just mentioned, Steve, are built in as one of the outputs of the different phases of development that it will take you through. So you can go through sort of discussion where you kind of set the context for the project, and it will kind of give a high level plan of the things that you're going to have to go through. And then it'll explore architecture decisions, design decisions, all the way through to implementation. And when you get to implementation, it will help you do that with executable specifications, and it will help you, prompt you to generate those sorts of things and encourage you to do test-driven development. And all of the things that I think that you and I would agree are pretty essential for success with using these sorts of tools for doing anything new. So far, I've been pleasantly impressed by it. I'm working with it on a project of my own to see if I can learn how to use it better. But so far, I've been very pleasantly impressed. So I'd recommend people to take a look at that if any of the stuff that we talked about has resonated with you today.
Yep, I definitely think that's a direction that companies will go in soon. I believe what will happen is that companies will start to say, we're not seeing productivity gains out of these tools as we'd expect. And then eventually people will start to say, oh, these tools are kind of hard to control. What if we could give them stronger guardrails around what matters for our organization, not just our industry?
Yeah.
And there's going to be a whole wave of skills for the different AI tools and guidelines and controls that I think could make a real difference.
Yeah. And fundamentally, I think that what we're describing is a more disciplined approach to engineering. Discipline's kind of an unfortunate sounding word. This isn't onerous hard work, but it is just a bit more organized thinking, so that we don't fall into traps.
We were supposed to be wrapping up now. I seem to remember someone telling me. So I think so. Our question that we both definitely remember was around, can AI succeed without a technical foundation? I think the answer is no, it can't. And we hope that it's going to get easier and quicker for companies to create their own technical foundation for themselves with tooling. Otherwise, it could be quite a few companies that struggle to get the most out of Gen AI tools.
Yeah, that's a great summary. So thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much if you've been watching. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and to like and to join us in the comments for a conversation afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks.